Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the reorganization meeting of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Planning Board. Today is Monday, January 7th, 2019, and the time is 7:30 p.m. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that it is being conducted in accordance with the NJSA 10:4-6 of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. We will start with correspondence. We have a letter from Mayor Soriano dated January 4th, 2019, reappointing Jennifer Veely as a Class 2 member of the Planning Board for a term ending December 31st, 2019. Letter from Mayor Soriano dated January 4th, 2019, appointing Dominic Mealy as alternate number 1 of the Planning Board for a term ending December 31st, 2020. Memo from the clerk dated January 4th, 2019, confirming the council appointment of Michael DiPiero as a Class 3 member of the Planning Board for a term ending December 31st, 2019. We'll now have the swearing in of the board members by Scott Carlson.
We'll do these one at a time. Councilman, you first, please. Raise your right hand. I, Michael DiPiero,
I, Michael DiPiero,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state,
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state,
under the authority of the people, so help me God.
under the authority of the people, so help me God.
I do further solemnly swear or affirm
I do further solemnly swear
that I will impartially and justly
that I will impartially and justly
perform all the duties of
perform all the duties of
the office of Planning Board Member Class 3,
the office of Planning Board Member Class 3,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sign up. Veely?
Welcome back, Michael. Thank you, Bob. Happy New Year. Thank you, you too.
I, Jennifer Veely, I'll raise your right hand,
I, Jennifer Veely,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I do further solemnly swear or affirm
I do further solemnly swear
that I will impartially and justly
that I will impartially and justly
perform all the duties of
perform all the duties of
the office of Planning Board Member Class 2,
the office of Planning Board Class 2,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mealy.
Yes.
Raise your right hand, please. I, Dominic Mealy,
I, Dominic Mealy,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will impartially and justly
that I will impartially and justly
perform all the duties of the office
perform all the duties of the office
of Planning Board Member Alternate Number 1,
of Planning Board Member Alternate Number 1,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Welcome back, Mr. Mealy.
Thank you.
Turn that to you.
Yes.
Okay. I will now open nominations for chairman.
It is my great pleasure to nominate Bob Keller to be chairman of this board.
Seconded.
Are there any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed.
Second?
Seconded.
You can say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chairman takes over.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate the confidence you've placed in me that I didn't mess up too badly last year, that you're welcoming me back. So happy New Year to everyone. I'll entertain nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Thomas Dinsmore for vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second, Apelwick.
Mr. Perowick seconds. Are there any other nominations? Okay, well, I move nominations be closed then. Those in favor of Mr. Dinsmore as vice chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Welcome back, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Did you want a motion reaffirming?
I'm sorry?
You don't want a motion reaffirming the planning board?
Yes, yes, we do. I'll
I move-
entertain a motion to
Move we-
reaffirm the highly qualified, on camera, see, it messed me up.
Move we reaffirm
Nora.
Planning Board Secretary Nora Jolie.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mealy seconds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank
Those
you.
opposed say no. Welcome back, Nora.
Thank you.
Great job you've done. Appointment of Minor Site Plan and Subdivision Committee. Vice Chairman, Mr. Dinsmore, will be the chairman of the Minor Site Plan Committee.
I
if
would
he
be happy
agrees.
to do that again. Thank you.
Okay, and members, Ms. Hernandez, Mr. Mealy, Mr. Perowick, and who am I forgetting, Nora?
I
Who was?
think last year, did you?
Yeah, I did it. I don't have to do it again.
I
was there last year.
If
But
there's,
I think the missing piece was me in that.
if there's anybody else.
We'd be
Yeah.
happy to have you again.
If
I was
anyone
on
else
last
would
year,
like
too.
it, otherwise I'll do it again, but.
Or
John.
John Van Auken.
Jo-
He was-
John, I mentioned you, didn't I?
No.
John, yes,
Okay.
John. John Van Aken.
Happy to do it.
Okay. That's a full 5. Yay. We functioned with 4 for much of last year. Planning Board Professionals. We have Susan Pavate as Planning Board Planner. Andrew Cangiano as Engineer. And Keller and Kirkpatrick, and Scott Carlson, Attorney. Are there any objections to reappointing those?
I think just to get a motion, you can do all three at the same time.
Okay.
Move we reappoint.
Well, I wanted to see if there are any objections
Sure,
first.
right.
Now I'll entertain a motion to reappoint.
So moved.
Second Dinsmore.
Okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. We're reorganized for 2019. Thank you. Is there a
Thank you very
motion
much,
to
also.
adjourn the reorganization
Andrew and I say
meeting?
thank you.
So moved, Dinsmore.
Motion by Mr. Dinsmore to adjourn the reorganization meeting. Is there a second?
A
Second, Apelwick.
Mr. Perowick seconds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, the regular meeting of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Planning Board. It's Monday, January 7th, and it's 7:41 p.m. Can you please call the roll?
Mr. Perowick,
Present.
Councilman DePiero,
Here.
Mr. Dinsmore,
Here.
Mr. Fugere,
Here.
Ms. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Mendel,
Here.
Mr. Mealy,
Here.
Ms. Veely,
Here.
Mr. Von Aiken,
Here.
Chairman Kettler.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Also present?
Oop, pardon me. Also present, Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Ms. Favate.
Here.
And Mr. Holloway.
Here.
Okay. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given, and it's being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act. Ask you to please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll open the meeting to the general public for anything that's not on the agenda for this evening. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion. If there are no objections, I'm going to flip-flop the agenda and have Craftsman's Farms come forward first for their courtesy review. Doing this because I think that their application is going to be much shorter than RD, so we can get you home in time for Monday Night Football if there was one. But my
National championship.
season's over. The Steelers are gone.
Oh, yeah, there's a rather important college game on tonight.
Oh, yeah, well.
Which one's up?
Clemson, Alabama.
Ooh.
Championship.
Motion to postpone until tomorrow.
The football game? Or the-
My brother-in-law.
You can stand, you're just gonna wanna use one of them, speak into one of the mics for recording purposes.
Just a suggestion, but if you put the drawing over where the slide is, Nora can flip that camera so since it's video recorded,
I'm not sure how to flip the camera.
there's just a little button you push down there.
I'm not sure which little button it is.
You're the control room.
All right, it was just a thought. You don't have to do it.
I'll find out from Sweden.
But now it's a challenge.
What if we can sit all on there?
I'll be standing for most of this. These two guys I think will sit down. My name is Eric Holterman from HMR Architects in Princeton, New Jersey. We've been here in Parsippany before. I don't know if we've spoken in front of this board, but we've done some other historic projects in Parsippany Hills, Parsippany-Troy Hills, Bowlesby-Degelicke House, Baldwin House, Mount Tabor, and Craftsman Farms. We've been doing architectural work at Craftsman Farms for a couple of decades, actually. My name is Eric Holterman. I'm a principal of the firm. Kurt Leisure is the project manager, and Vonda Givens, I think you probably already know, executive director of the Stickler Museum at Craftsman Farms. We're here today for a courtesy review of a new administration building. The building is existing. It's a reconstruction, a historic reconstruction. The building was built in the Stickler era for use as a garage and storage building. It burned. The upper levels were rebuilt in a more modern fashion in the 1950s, I think. The historic stone foundation remained. Based on historic photos and other information we have, we're actually reconstructing the building back to its original historic configuration. The footprint is only slightly enlarged. The use is, the Stickler Museum currently has administrative offices in the upper levels. Currently the lower level, that level that is historic, was not destroyed by the fire, has continued to be used as storage and garage. That space actually will change use and will be used as an education center for the museum. I'd like Vonda to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the Stickler Museum and this building.
Okay. So I'll just say a couple of words about how this building came about. And
You can
do you
be
need a-
seated if you would like, just to make sure that you're
To pick
near
up by the mic?
microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take the mic with you.
You know me, I'm not shy. So I'll sit so I can make sure I can be heard.
Okay.
So I think the thing to start with is to say that, well, first of all, thanks for having us here because I love talking about Craftsman Farms and happy to do it anytime. And the plans that we have for the future. We are a self-funded organization, and so we are always looking for ways to maximize our income potential. So our annual budget is $500,000, and one of our goals for the future is to become more financially stable. And we have been running educational programs throughout. I should also say we turned 30 this month. Our organization turns 30 in January of this month. I mean, in this month, we were formed in 1989. So we've been running regular educational programs for Girl Scouts, for adults since 2008. And that entire time, since we opened our current education room, the demand has been greater than we can accommodate. So as we've been growing, we were looking for a space that could accommodate, and we can now hold about 30 Girl Scouts. We would like to have more like 50 or 60 in a program. And so the building project really began with looking for, first of all, ways to accommodate the demand we already have. And secondly, when you are at a historic site like ours, you want people to not think that they can come one time and see it. They need to come back for other programs and other things that we can do. So we need to engage people in different ways on the property. So exhibitions, different programs, hosting a beer tasting, something like that would be a good way to bring people in. And right now we can't really accommodate something like that in our current space. If you've been in our education room, you know, with an adults in the room and tables, about 30 is the max that we can really accommodate. So the building started with looking for space to bring in more people, engage with more people. We're a polling location currently. If you vote in the site, you know that we're just barely big enough to host the voting in our area. So the ground level of this garage was utilitarian space. It's kind of perfect to be able to accommodate the current need and to be able to grow and expand. We've also maxed out our staff space, and we need to be able to bring in more staff, but we need to provide an adequate workspace, so that's what we're looking to do. And we also have maxed out our storage space, so we're a collecting facility. We have 9 buildings at Craftsman Farms, but if you collect anything, you know that you can't really just put collections in a space that's kind of like putting in a garage. So you have to be able to manage it, to keep mold out and to keep leaks out and things like that. So we are looking forward to having more storage space, and we were able to accommodate all of those things with this one building. So that was how the building started, and it literally grew from the ground up there. We started with what was there originally, and then as we began to look at our needs and match up our strategies for the future against what the building could do, it was a really good fit. And it's a good time at our 30th anniversary to be doing a big project. It's exciting.
Here's a site plan of the overall Craftsman site. Manor Drive is here. You enter the Craftsman Farm site down this driveway. Our building.
No, that's all right.
Oh, yeah. Turn it over. Okay, good.
And you're going to need to have a microphone with you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I
Yes,
can I
Sure,
take this
just
one?
take that right out of the holder.
So the administration building is right here. If you've been there, you know that the driveway continues past that down to the log house, which is the main event at the Stickley Museum. So this building not only houses the administration building, and in the future will hold the education building, but it's really the gateway building to the entire historic complex, which is why using this photograph, which is circa 1912, is that correct?
It's older. It's from the
Older?
20s. There's no Stickley era photos. This is from the 20s.
Oh, this is from the 20s, but it's still showing the building that, the configuration that it was in.
Yeah.
In Stickley's period. So as historic architects, we had this to work with, which was terrific. You know, it's actually I'll pass this along. You can see there's actually quite a bit of detail in the drawing, in the photograph, and we were able to use that in the reconstruction of the upper levels. So the red portion is the existing portion of the building. This green portion is the added dormer that you can see in that photograph that sticks out, sort of like a portico share. It's a second floor, second story space, and underneath is open because it was a functional garage building originally. And in fact, we're putting it back that way. It'll be an entrance porch now, but it's still going to be open under there. And this blue portion that you see right there is the one place where we're actually expanding the footprint. That's a handicapped ramp, and since we're building a ramp anyway, we're using that space to tuck some storage underneath for tables and chairs and things like that. The place where we're building out this new dormer is over where there's already an existing concrete pad that's still remaining from the time when there was other construction there. So, to,
Room over open space.
so this is the main level where Vonda's offices are currently. How many people do you have on that floor?
7.
7 people. And in the new construction, that floor then will be built historically accurate to that photograph with new casement windows. We really, at the time of the fire, everything burned down to the stone foundation walls. So we're keeping the first floor plate, which is the ceiling of the garage, the ceiling of the basement, and building all new wood construction above that. So that, as far as the building department is concerned, it is a new building, so it has to comply with current code, but it's all designed to look historically as accurately as possible to that photograph. So visitors now visiting the museum will park over where Kurt is standing, enter this way, come in here, open porch underneath that dormer, and then enter here, and then a big open area in the middle of the space, more like the original construction. The building that Vonda's using now was built as a residential building with 2 apartments. It's still in the configuration of 2 apartments with kitchens, living rooms, bedrooms, a bunch of small spaces and little hallways. This will actually take it more back to what it looked like originally, historically, with a big open space in the middle, an office, conference room, bathroom, kitchen, stair tucked in the corner, and then a staircase going up to the level above, where because of the historic configuration, we're actually able to gain a little bit of space and have space at a second level underneath the gable roof. To go back to the basement level, so this is the current garage door on the downhill side. You know, when you enter the site, you're walking from your car. You're walking down this way, and right now you walk past this to get to the log house, which is over here. A new entranceway right in the middle where the garage door is now to enter into one single very large room with mechanical and stuff like that sort of packed against the back. There will also be handicapped bathrooms, pantry, kitchen, and then this over here is the storage that's tucked in underneath that ramp. But the idea really is to have a big open room. There's a dividing wall that comes across, you know, like one of those, to divide it sort of 2/3 and 1/3, depending on what kind of functions are going on, to separate this out as a boardroom when need be. But the idea really is just to restore these windows. The stone walls down here are all existing, they're historic, and to make this as simple a single large open space to be as flexible and usable for the education program as possible. And to take a look at the elevations. This is an elevation of the driveway side where, you know, right now the existing building is here. The stone foundation is existing and historic. Those windows will be restored. They're still there. They didn't get burned. Everything from here up is built new based on that historic photograph. The roof is steep enough that we can get some space in under there. And then there's that sort of funky looking dormer, which is not something that we ever would have designed that way if someone asked us to design a dormer, but that's what was there historically, and we're putting it back absolutely as accurately as we can. In Stickley's era, this was open sort of as a porte cochere to drive a truck or a wagon through there, and that will remain open, but it'll be sort of an open porch. That's the entry to the building. On the downhill side, there's the new entry that's replacing the garage door, and we'll have a small roof built. So when we vote, then that's where we're going, through that door into that big open room, and then all the rest of this is built again based on historic information with a series of casement windows that let a lot of light into that space. The other side elevation, no surprises there. New door though for a second fire escape, again a code requirement. And the uphill side coming from the parking lot, then, you know, the building itself rebuilt historically with the dormer in the middle and a porch underneath. I think that sort of generally covers what we're doing. I talked about the use, and I think that, Yvonne, anything else you want to add?
I did not think to mention the I was thinking more programmatic, but the entrance to the property will vastly improve from this, and it will give us a real way for when people are wayfinding is difficult on the property, so being able to know where you are and where you're going, the porch will definitely attract people to it, so people can see where to go to, and when we do this, we'll be able to move our current shop into our current program space. And so there's a domino effect, and then we'll be able to restore the log house kitchen, which is something that's another way for us to attract people to the site, because people love to see historic bathrooms and kitchens. It's just a thing. So it'll be another way for us to get people back to the property. So there's a nice domino effect that will come with this, and will help us to be able to draw more people to it. And the other thing I did not mention is that we're aware that as we grow, that there is a need in Parsippany for meeting space in around where we're located. The library is near us and maxed out most of the time, as I understand it. And one of the things that historic sites like this are often sort of pressured to be a place where you host wedding receptions, that kind of thing. And build a band shell and do that. One of the reasons why we want to steer towards what we can do well, which is have a meeting space. We can host about 20 or 30 people for a meeting. We do have a large space that is beautiful, that's outdoors, but I think it would be frustrating for our neighbors to have noisy parties nearby. But it is a way a lot of sites like ours earn income. So this is sort of steering us to something that we know could make us a resource, and again, bring more people onto the property and think of doing things on the property, which is the reason why Parsippany invests in it. So, it fulfills a variety of needs that I think that we can accommodate and that we're ready for, which is exciting.
Any questions?
At this time, you're not planning any changes to parking, walkways, driveways, lighting, exterior lighting, any of that?
So Vonda and I talked today, and she said, you know, what questions will they ask?
He did anticipate that question. Yeah, well, we just installed exterior lighting on the property for the first time and since Stickley's time, and we weren't able to fully complete our lighting plan, but it's vastly improved. We still need more parking lot lighting, but we need to raise more money to be able to do it. So when we have voting, we bring in R&R lighting. But again, to do a lot more lighting, I think it might be frustrating for our neighbors. Right now, the lights go out at midnight if they're on. So that's kind of we're always weighing that out so that we can not be a nuisance.
And there is no change planned for parking.
Okay.
Yeah, all of that is intended to stay.
Mm-hmm.
There's one ADA lot spot on the uphill side.
Per code, close to the building, there's
Yeah.
a single ADA.
And if I understood correctly, the access to the second floor is via ramp to the second floor?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Did you want me to go through?
Yeah.
Okay, this is very brief because this is a courtesy review, and I think as the board members know, your primary role here is to look at master plan consistency. So we identified what we thought were the relevant goals and objectives of your 2014 reexamination report. And there's a few general ones. There's about light, air, and open space, appropriate use and development of the land, the visual environment, and conservation of historic sites and districts, all of which we thought were relevant and all of which we thought were advanced by this application, by this proposal. And then there's two more specific goals. The first deals with protection of environmental features. There are some wetlands on the site, but as we understand the proposal, there is no impact whatsoever to those wetlands. The proposal will basically maintain the natural environment of the property. The next goal is dealing with aesthetic character, and I think as you just heard from the architect, there really is every effort being made to maintain and actually improve the historic character of the Stickley Craftsman Farm Museum. and the whole site. So our bottom line was that this is consistent with your master plan reexamination, with all the goals that we found were relevant. And the only suggestion we had, which is just a suggestion of that, is that it looked like there'll be 2 trees lost with the expansion, and we were just hopeful that you could find somewhere else on the site to perhaps replace those. And I'm sure that the forestry department could give you some advice on, location, species, if there's adequate room.
Yeah, almost everything now is secondary growth.
Mhm.
There's one tree that remains from the Stickley era, but we're definitely sensitive to that because
Yeah.
it's also creates a barrier between us and the neighbors.
Yeah.
So, and I think as we grow, that more people will want that
Yeah.
as well.
So that's all we had.
Okay. Any comments from any other board members?
What are the conditions of the driveways and the walkways?
Of the driveway is a paved driveway.
Okay.
And it's located it's where the original one is.
And it's in good condition.
And it's in
Okay.
good condition, and it's better lit now than it's ever been. I'll say
Okay.
that. Yeah, it's better lit than it's ever
Okay.
been.
Are there walkways between each of the buildings?
Yes, between the buildings that are most in public use. Yes,
Okay.
and there's now an ADA accessible walkway to the current education space. So once we complete this building, we'll have 2 ADA accessible, 2 buildings that are ADA accessible, which is
This is
really
pretty impressive for a
advancement
historic
You
site.
also mentioned sort of how visitors visit the site and that they're not wandering around on their own.
Well,
You know,
yes.
That they're generally collected.
Yeah, except
to
for our
a
neighbors who
particular-
walk through the property and know the conditions of the driveway. But yes, when visitors come for tours, they are walking down on a driveway, and then as they're mostly going into the main log house building, which has a path and has 2 different access points depending on if you have a mobility issue. So that's pretty much everything that's in current regular use has access.
Okay, thank you.
Couple engineering, have you had a chance to review the engineering memo that was offered?
We've
No.
not seen that.
Okay, there were just a handful of questions, and mostly it's things that weren't clear on the plans, because it looked like the sump pump was being sent into the sewer line, and I think it's just a CAD drawing error. We had questions similar to the location of the dry well, that there would be a soil test done to make sure that it's going to be draining and not sitting full of water. So we want to make sure that that is property. So there was a couple items about the pipe cleanouts and the sump pump discharge to the storm drain, but pretty much we can get you a copy of the engineering memo, and it's more than likely just changes that have to be made to the plans, just to clarify, so when it goes to construction, there is no confusion. And if there's any questions, you can always just give me a call.
All right, very good.
Any comments from any other board members? Yeah.
Just a couple of comments. Number one, when you enter this property, first impressions are important. That's the first building you will see when you walk in. So the first impression is going to be very favorable. The lighting is far better than it ever was before. We didn't have that lighting before for the November vote, did we?
We did.
We did.
We did. Yes, we weren't able to complete all the parking lot lighting, but it's a lot improved. And
Yeah.
but even still, the clerk wanted to bring the R&R lighting, and so we did anyway.
Yeah, the trustees, having that as a polling place is good, because some people now know where Craftsman Farms is that did not before.
It's in Morris Plains,
But
right?
I'm a trustee, and
gotta
I've been
go
yelling about
really
the
past
lights
it on
for
Route 10.
years, that we need better lighting if we're going to be have people coming in there that are not familiar with the property, and then that was a good thing. The other thing, Vonda, maybe you should just mention the funding. The township, with our historic funds, has helped with this, and maybe you might want to mention something about that.
Sure, I'd be happy to mention that. We started the process of working on this building project back in 2013, and it started with seed money from the township, and enough funds dedicated to this building project that we could do a couple of feasibility studies on 2 buildings to look at what our options were and what were the best ways to maximize the potential for a couple of different buildings on the site. And then once we had really developed this project, I came back to the council and we requested funding for the building. We've received $1.75 million from the township for open space funds toward the project, and it was incredibly generous and helpful towards getting the building project. The whole project we anticipate will be 2.5 to 2.8 million, and but having that confidence and funding from the township has been hugely helpful with us to go for additional funding. So we received a grant from Morris County Historic Preservation Trust in July, and it was sufficient funding to start the construction project. So we anticipate that we have enough funding for the hard costs of construction, so we're still fundraising for the remainder of the building, but we had sufficient funds to start, and we're continuing on. And we still need to furnish the building, obviously. So if your name's Stickley, you want to furnish it nicely, and that's our goal. So.
The other thing, I maybe some of the members don't realize it, but Craftsman Farms is not just historic site. It's a landmark. It has landmark classification. Landmarks are not too many in
Only
New Jersey.
1,100 or so
I mean,
in the
the
country.
Statue of Liberty is a landmark. That's the class that we're in when we call this a landmark, and I think that's a significant.
It is. We're a National Historic Landmark. We have just our general foot traffic. People who just drop by for a tour is around 7,000 per year, which of course we want to increase. But we don't. We want to keep people coming, and we want to give them reasons to return. We especially want to get our neighbors to come and visit and give them reasons to return, because that will help us to continue on for another 30 years. But we have visitors. We poll visitors. We have data from our surveys, and we know we have visitors from all over the world. And so it's kind of fun to look at our data and see who visits us, because I don't give tours that often anymore, but when I do, it's normal to have people from all over the country. Not so much down the road, but a lot of people who drop by from all over. If people are in the New York area, a lot of times this is something that's a destination they want to come to. It's a bucket list for a lot of
Particularly
people.
architecture and furniture is very popular in California. And oddly enough, all right, New Jersey has the largest number of visitors, but California is, I believe, the second largest number of visitors come from California, where Stickley is very, very popular.
Yeah, yeah.
What percentage of visitors come from outside of the United States?
Outside, I don't have that figure. It's probably less than 5%, but but in the United, like between our metropolitan area, New Jersey, New York, mostly New Jersey, New York, it's about 42% of our visitors, and everybody else is from outside that area. So it's not quite 50-50, but it breaks down that much. And our membership is another way to fundraise, is you can be a member of the museum, and our membership follows that almost exactly the same. It's almost exactly the same figures, even though many people visit who don't become members. It's just kind of a coincidence.
It's a fascinating place, one of the jewels in Parsippany, certainly.
Do you often get donations of furniture?
We do. We don't accept a lot of donations because we can't accommodate a lot of more furniture. So if you've been to the museum, you've seen the best of our collection. It's out.
Yes.
That's the best way for us to conserve it and keep an eye on it, is to see it, because we don't
Yes.
have a big staff. So we don't accept a lot of gifts unless it was owned by Gustav Stickley, it was in the house, or if it's just a really exceptional piece of furniture that we think in the future is important. The collections we hold are in the public trust, and so we're telling Stickley's story and trying to collect accordingly. We had a significant gift of very rare green ash Stickley furniture this past year, and for the first time had to rent a storage unit to be able to accommodate it, because we just couldn't bring in 20 pieces of furniture. But our trustees and our collections committee felt that it was so rare that it really should be available for the public to view and not be in another private. It would have been it would have been put up for auction and then dispersed. 20 pieces would have been dispersed, and so they would never have been seen all together. And so we kind of took a leap and decided to do that. But in the future, we hope to accommodate it on the property because we have 9 buildings. We should be able to. That's probably the next step, is to be able to have a space where we can store collections items that aren't on view otherwise. And people love to do behind-the-scenes tours, so you want to do something that could be storage for collections, so we can use it, but also have people can come and do a behind-the-scenes tour and see our collection.
Cool.
Where will the current functions that are in that building take place while this construction happens?
Well, the idea was that the staff would move into a trailer in the parking lot. And the trailer was moved onto the parking lot, and we got our zoning permit, and we're all set, but it was moved in at Thanksgiving, and JCP&L powered it on New Year's Day. So we've been set up temporarily in our current education space. We have Girl Scouts coming this weekend. We had to cancel because we couldn't get out in time. But it's hopefully in about the next 2 weeks we'll be able to move, and then our education programs will resume as normal, and the staff will be in the trailer for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments from board?
Do visitors sign in? And is there a cost to visit?
Yes, there's a cost to
Okay.
visit. It's $10 for adults and $7 for seniors. On Thursdays, in the months of July and August, it's $1 for everybody in Parsippany. So if you live in Parsippany, you get a break in the summer to come and visit.
Hang on till August.
I do have the keys. I can take people in anytime. Admissions is not. We usually make more money on our shop, so admissions is a way that we earn income, but usually it's more from people shopping on site. And people don't sign in, but we do collect surveys from visitors, and we do it on a weekly basis, and we do it randomly so that we can get a pretty accurate sample. And so we know quite a bit about how people find out about us, our economic impact in the area. For instance, we know that more than nearly 60% of our visitors are dining in the area, buying gas in the area, shopping in the area, that sort of thing, and doing sometimes multiple activities. So those are and we also get their zip code. So we do have that data for the past 2 or 3 years.
Probably our largest attendance day is Family Day.
Actually, voting is probably technically speaking, but yes, definitely Family Day is a big is one of our bigger days, and so we're kind of maxed out of our parking lot for that particular event. But we try to bring in around 500 to 600 people if the weather's good.
Just a clarification. Currently, you can handle about 30. You said you were going to 60, but then you went back to the 30 number for meeting spaces at a future date. Is that incorrect? Or?
No, I was thinking about was talking about this accordion wall. So we'll have about a third of the building will be set up as a conference room. It'll be our main conference room when our trustees meet, and that is a meeting space that what I'm planning to do is offer it to Parsippany residents at a rate that'll just help us to offset the cost to clean it, and and then otherwise we would rent it out to other people who might want to use it. And that space would probably accommodate around a table, maybe 20, 25 or so. The whole space should seat, I'm looking at Eric, I think it's around 100 seated.
The maximum occupancy of that lower use space is 160. We don't know yet.
Right, we're probably not going to pack it with 160. So if we, for instance, had an event ourselves and took down the wall that's the non-permanent wall, then we could have 100 people in there. But our plan is we need a conference space ourselves, and our plan is for most of the time to have this third of the building set up as a conference room, which would mean it's a place that we could host meetings there and keep a schedule, and as long as we can keep up the cleaning part of it, then I think it's something we can do.
So
Does that answer the question?
partition is kind of here, so that could be a smaller meeting room or open up for.
How many parking spaces do you have?
for the whole site, there's no, it's not blacktopped and there's no lines. So I can say that when we have family day, we can probably park 60 or so cars pretty comfortably, maybe.
Okay.
But, you know, it all depends on the first 10 people who park. So, you know, as I said the next goal was storage space. The next goal is really parking with adequate parking that's marked out so
On
people can
Family
park.
Day, the
Yeah.
police are there conducting traffic, and they allow some parking across the street.
People, yeah. We're kind of on the cusp of, with that event, needing a auxiliary parking, but we're,
Right, yeah, but we do have
For
space.
the most part,
We do have space across the street that
Yeah.
is not being used
like
right
for instance,
now.
we have 2 open houses per year. Like the day after, it's like around it's the day after our gala weekend. We do a free open house, and we might have 150 or 200 people, but we can accommodate it because they're coming all afternoon. So it's the parking lot's full, but it's rotating. It's the hardest part is we have something at a set time, and then everybody has to come at that time. That's not generally what we're doing, so it works out pretty well.
Okay, any other comments?
Well, I'm just wondering because when you have the potential for having a conference with over 100 people, then the parking becomes critical.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to see where this could eventually go to, and I thank you very much for your review.
Yeah. Well,
And-
it's something that it's a good problem to have. Right now, I think the demand is we're able to accommodate it, but it's not perfect.
Well,
It's
it looks
not a
like your
perfect
stewardship
situation.
is bringing it to a point where it will be even better for the town of Parsippany.
I hope so.
Just wish its address was Parsippany instead of Morris Plains.
That is my pet peeve. It
I
has
know.
been.
Can we talk to the
Every time I
post
see an arts
office?
and craft magazine and it says located in Morris Plains,
It's not coming from us, I'll tell you that.
no, it's the stupid post office.
All right, so it looks like the only thing that we would ask you to do is check that sump pump thing.
Yeah, we'll take the engineer.
And if you can find another place to replace the trees that you'll be removing.
We can do that.
Apart from that, the board wishes you good luck.
Thank you. Come to
Thank
the
you.
grand opening.
Thank you.
Okay, the first case, which is being heard second, is RD Realty, application 18:523 for amended preliminary and final site plan approval and conditional use.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Hoff of the law firm of Bisgar Hoff here on behalf of the applicant, RD Realty LLC. As the chairman indicated, we're here tonight for an amended preliminary and final site plan review and conditional use approval in connection with the Waterview Marketplace. The board will recall I was here in November trying to get this approved without a site plan application, and I was sent on my way, appropriately so, and now I'm back.
Apologies.
No apologies necessary. So we went ahead, I put the engineer to work, and we have a full-fledged site plan application here for what amounts to really, in our view, a relatively minor change. As the board
Before
might...
you go any further, I'd like
Yeah.
to ask our planner if she could just get the rest of the board, we have a lot of new members on the board that were not here for the original application.
Sure.
Just to bring them up to speed on how we get to tonight.
No problem.
I'm just be very brief because this actually predates me as well. But I think several members know, probably all of you have seen, it's under construction right over here, or there. Back in 2016, the applicant received approval to construct about 150,000 square foot shopping center, which is currently under construction, Waterview Marketplace. That had been the culmination of a couple years of litigation, and so as part of that litigation, there was a settlement agreement that was reached between the applicant and the township, and that made some adjustments to the square footage. It signed off on a various and sundry things. A couple of elements of that were that restaurants would be allowed as a conditional use for this property, and the condition primarily related to parking, whether there was sufficient parking. So that's that's kind of the planning board's sort of role here, is to look at parking. Most recently, back in early December, there was an amendment to the settlement agreement, which further adjusted the square footages because now the applicant is getting tenants. And so just finalizing the actual individual sizes of the spaces. And as I understand this, the amended settlement agreement in the future, if there are changes, you will not have to come back to this board for parking. It would be done administratively by the township engineer. But that process, he had already started, so you're here now for a full site plan review, and I'll let the attorney go through the proposal. But the basic change here is previously it was a drive-through bank that was approved on the pad site, which you could see out in the parking lot. And now that will be changed to, or it's proposed to be changed to a Shake Shack, fast casual restaurant. Slightly smaller in terms of square footage, no drive-through, a little bit different landscaping, which the applicant will go through, but that's the primary change. Otherwise, all of the other approvals which are in place are, as I understand it, unchanged.
That is correct. The only thing that we're here for tonight is the little building in the middle there, and as you've just heard, it is changing a bank, which was originally approved at a time where we thought it might be a bank, but again, it was at the outset. And now we have a firm lease from a very anxious tenant looking to get in there to construct the Shake Shack. So that took all of my background away from me, so there's no need for me to now repeat it. So with that, I'll just, if I could get our engineer sworn.
We pay her the big bucks to do this.
You want to do completeness?
I'm happy when people do my work for me.
Yeah, back to
Sure.
Ms. Mavate for
Yeah.
completeness review.
I'll run through this. I mean, there is a background here. There's a lot that's been submitted and approved in the past. So for just this application, the applicant had requested some waivers. There was only one item that wasn't provided that is required at the time of the application, and that's the permission to enter property that has been provided. And I think you all have a copy of it tonight. A waiver was requested on protective covenants and deed restrictions. We felt the applicant could just address that through testimony. The application indicated that site photographs were provided. Those weren't provided in the package that we saw, so I think that could also be addressed in testimony. There was a waiver requested on details on signage. We were hopeful that the applicant could address signage, the signage plan, as well as lighting as part of the testimony. Given that you're here, I know that the zoning department likes to see sort of a complete package. If you're before the planning board, it'd be nice to see the signage as well. I think storm drainage, the engineer has reviewed, and further testimony will be provided. There was a brief description of the usage of the buildings, which really only pertained to the supermarket, but we felt that the testimony could address that as well. Traffic study, really just to the extent, if any, that Shake Shack versus a bank changes traffic flows and circulation. Our sense was it would not change generation, but again, testimony could speak to that. And then there was a waiver requested on final major site plan. We concurred with that. This could be done together as one application. And that's it. So we determined it complete for the purposes of tonight's meeting.
So we don't need any waivers if they address all this in
Correct.
testimony. Okay.
Okay.
Back to you.
Sure. I'm going to start with Mr. Thakars, our engineer on the project. Get him sworn and qualified.
Raise your right hand, please. State your, I'm sorry. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, it's Chirag Thakar, Chirag, first name, last name Thakar, with Arna Engineering, 1456 Ferry Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
I'm sorry, would you spell your first name for me again, please?
Chirag.
Great, thank you.
And Mr. Thakar, for the board, can you give your professional and educational background, please?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in civil engineering. I have a professional engineer license in the state of New Jersey since 2003, and it is in good standing. I've testified before this board and numerous other townships in New Jersey.
Anyone have any questions on his qualifications? We'll accept.
Okay. Mr. Rogg, you heard the summary of what's being proposed tonight with the application, but if you could, with the benefit of the site plan exhibit, would,
If you're going to go over there,
Yeah, why don't you take the
a
mic?
mic with you.
it's already on, bro.
This exhibit was part of the packet that was.
That's correct.
I'll look at, let me see the microphone. Right here. Sometimes when they take it out, it goes. It should be on.
That's all right. I can use
Just
your
grab
microphone with
his.
the
It should be
pointer.
on.
Yeah, I can just take it. As Rick had just briefed, what we are here for is a simple change in terms of the building that is located as you come in through the main entrance drive. The main entrance drive being the Porterview Boulevard and the side access, which is going to be signalized. The driveway comes up, which is the first building to the right as you approach the site. Before, during the last amended site plan approval, this was a bank, 3,550 square feet with 3 drive-through lanes, 2 drive-through lanes, and a bypass, or a total of 3 lanes. Essentially the same parking configuration. The proposed building fits within the boundary of this curb, as I'm pointing my finger to it, the perimeter curb around it. So the drive aisle on the north side, south side, east and west really did not change. The circulation still remains the same. In fact, these parking spaces are essentially the same. The front parking field between the Shake Shack building and the adjacent retail space did not change. So a large part of the plan is essentially the same. There's really no change in the layout. What we are here for is a 3,120 square foot Shake Shack with an outdoor seating area. The plan complies in terms of the zoning ordinance, and we are not requesting any waivers, so it complies from an engineering standards. From an impervious change or an alteration, the plan is materially the same. We still have 77% impervious, so therefore there is really no impact to the drainage. The storm pipe network, like I said, because the perimeter curb did not have to change in any material way, the previously approved inlets, the drainage calculations, everything else associated with that did not have to be updated. Same goes with lighting. The buildings, the bank building previously did not have any wall-mounted packs, so they were all pole-mounted light poles. Again, as a result of a de minimis change to the site layout, the lighting plan didn't get impacted. So as you could see that the underlying base stayed the same, therefore every other element of the engineering design stayed the same.
So there's no wall packs on this Shake Shack building?
Correct. Not on this plan that we are proposing. Now, if Shake Shack has an outdoor seating and they would like to light it or have it lit slightly better, then it would just enhance the lighting that's already there. Like I said, so the only change there is in terms of a parking reconfiguration is that previously we had 679 parking spaces. We have 684 parking spaces, which complies with the code. I believe Susan had a comment in her review letter regarding the parking, that we had slightly more parking than what we need. Her and I had a conversation this afternoon or this morning, and we were of the opinion that we'd like to keep what we have because the overall parking count for the shopping center is 684 spaces. If we have 5 or 6 extra spaces, that's about only 1% of an overall parking count. Given that all the tenants are yet to be signed up for all of the buildings, and the way the parking ordinance or the zoning ordinance reads that requires parking is based on patron area for restaurant uses, which is then tied into the architectural layout of the internal space of the building. So we'd like to hold a little bit more flexibility that we have in terms of 4 or 5 spaces. So her and I had the conversation, and we'd like to have that if we could, hold on to those spaces, because I think that it would be sin for us to give them up and then come back again for a variance for a parking if the tenant changes.
So we did talk about a compromise.
Yes,
if you
I'm
wanna
coming
get
to
into
it.
that now. Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
So her and I talked, so Susan was of the opinion that we lose the 2 parking spaces to the east end of the island. So as I'm pointing to it, there are 2 parking spaces, and her opinion was that since these 2 spaces have a short throat and they back up into a drive aisle, that we give up those 2 spaces because we still have more than what we need. And the way we discussed, the compromise was that we would land bank it, meaning if we need it, then we have it. But if we don't need it, then it could convert back into a grass space. So, and I believe that you were okay with that?
Yeah, and I discussed it with Mr. Carlson earlier today, and because of the terms of the settlement agreement that you have with the township, our feeling was that if in the future you needed those 2 spaces, that you would not have to come back to the planning board, because under the terms of the settlement agreement, it basically is just administratively reviewed by the township engineer. So I think we both felt comfortable with that. You know, honestly, my sense is you won't need them. My hope is you won't need them, and that can really accentuate that landscape area next to the Shake Shack, which is the outdoor seating area. So that was kind of what was driving that sort of compromise. But I think both sides felt comfortable with that.
Okay.
If the board concurs.
And just to be clear, the land banking is that you leave it and you come back and make it a parking space. The way you described it the other way around, like it was going to be a parking space, and you were.
That's how Susan and I talked, but I think your voicemail to me said that we were going to land bank it, which means basically it's green now.
It's green
and
now.
should we need it,
Yeah.
we can convert
Okay.
that.
It would
only-
Which is fine, either
yeah.
ways is okay with us.
It would only not be green if it were needed
Correct.
as parking.
And if I may, what I'll
Right.
do is I'll write it into the resolution as requiring that they can be freed up and turned into parking space with the approval of the township engineer, and I'll say, or the planning board, so that in the event you don't get satisfaction with the township engineer, you are still free to come to the planning board with that request.
Yeah, I think that's all right. So I think that, I mean, that's really my summary of the description of what we are here for. I believe Mr. Holloway and I had a conversation on the phone. I have not seen your memo yet, but I believe that hopefully.
Well, basically, it's what we discussed on the phone, and if you could provide us with more information about the trash area, it's how it's going to be used, how it's going to be accessed, and also if the access for the circulation for the garbage trucks.
Yes, that should be all right. That's fine. We could provide that. That's not a problem.
So we're looking for a circulation plan just to prove they can fit, and also the material.
So Susan and I did speak because I brought it up, and I said that you specifically asked me to bring it to Susan's attention. That so the trash enclosure is going to be board-on-board fence, which is how it was previously approved, which is how all the trash enclosures are throughout the property. And I believe that Susan didn't have any issues with them. It's not in the review letter, so it should be.
That the construction detail will be added to the plans.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And the gates, you have to make sure the gates are never left open, because I see the traffic circulation area
Yes.
would be impacted by the gates if they were to be left open.
Certainly.
So the gates themselves, are they going to be board on board also?
Yes.
Okay. It's a necessary, it's a trash enclosure area that was not a part of the original plan, so it looks like it's just a necessary function for this.
For the
Bank
restaurant.
didn't need one.
Right.
Yeah.
Pickup would be arranged during off-peak
Right.
hours.
Of trash.
Correct.
Trash.
Yes.
Trash collection off peak hours.
You want to avoid traffic conflicts as much as you can.
Agreed.
Mr. Chairman, just if I may, we had a couple other comments. We were asking for some details on the landscaped outdoor dining area, location of tables, and the paving treatments. That could be a construction detail that we review. And then there were a few items that were part of the amended settlement agreement that was made with the Township Council that we wanted just to confirm that to the extent that they're relevant. I'm not sure that all 3 are relevant to this, but certainly the first one, which deals with odor and a specialized exhaust system, just confirm that everything is consistent.
Yes, that is to be installed in accordance with the amended settlement agreement.
Okay. And then if there are additional plantings, and then there's some fencing, I don't know that that's specifically relevant to the Shake Shack, but overall, it's part of the site plan.
Yeah, obviously no problem with a condition that represents we're bound by the terms of the revised settlement, which we're fully aware of. Yep.
Great.
Holloway, do you have any further?
No.
You're good? This outdoor dining area, is it immediately adjacent to parking?
Yes. I'm going to try to trace this with a pen. So the outdoor dining area is right here, to the east side of the building.
Okay.
And the parking spaces are, I'm sorry, I interrupted. The parking spaces are along where I'm tracing with my hand. Parking spaces here, there's a sidewalk connection that brings you up here, and there are parking spaces all around.
What I'm getting to is there some way for you to barricade, block that outside dining area from vehicles being able to drive into it? I would hate for, 3 or 4 families to be sitting there in a car, get its gas pedal stuck, and end up in the dining area. Planters, bollards, something.
Yeah, we could do bollards.
Or heavy concrete planters if you're landscaping there too. I mean, something that
That would be prettier.
something that would keep cars from being able to go into that.
Yeah, I think that we can work out, we can sketch up a detail, and we'll work with Susan and get that established, yeah.
So you can agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. Something that we'll be looking at is in our master plan review is we currently have ordinances, parking place for every 3 seats, right? We ran into an issue with that, and I'm not familiar with Shake Shack. I've heard of it. It's a big name. But I don't know anything about it. Never been in one, never seen one. We had a local restaurant that opened up that's primarily a sports bar. Well, 1 space for every 3 seats doesn't work because people tend to come alone after work. What kind of a place is Shake Shack? Is this a family, take the kids like a, I hate to say the word, McDonald's or Burger King, or is it,
Bob,
describe it.
I've been to Shake Shack in Livingston, right off the Livingston Circle. And I would say that I didn't see too many singles.
Okay.
2s and 3s, and then the 4 and the 5 would seem to be the rule.
So it's not the kind of place where people would go to meet.
It's not a sports bar.
Yeah, it's not a sports bar.
I would say it's pretty similar
Well, it
to
does have a liquor
Burger.
license,
Yes.
or you're assuming that,
Okay.
correct? You're
I'm-
assuming a liquor license,
No, I wasn't.
because they're showing beer storage.
Does it serve alcohol?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
I didn't even hear what you said.
If you're going to comment, you have to come up and be sworn.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Patricia Segedin, P-A-T-R-I.
A little louder, please, I'm sorry.
P-A-T-R-I-C-I-A. Segedin, S-E-G-E-D-I-N.
Thank you.
And your position with this application?
I work as a project consultant for Shake Shack.
And you heard the question regarding the liquor offering?
Yes, typically, Shake Shack will have
Hold the
the
microphone.
opportunity to purchase a liquor license if it's available to them. So their typical menu will show beer, their facility will be planned for that storage and that opportunity comes to be. And that's why you see it on the plan.
It's not designed to have a bar or something like that. It's designed so that if somebody comes in and wants to have a hamburger, they can have a beer with that hamburger.
Exactly.
That's what I saw in London, so.
Does the one in Livingston have a liquor license?
I do not believe so.
One in Penn
to my
Station does.
memory. It may, but I
Never
haven't
gonna
been
do
with my
that.
grandchildren, and I didn't order a beer with it, so.
There's not a lot of liquor licenses.
I just have to go down there tomorrow.
They're few and far between.
What, the liquor licenses?
In
Well,
Livingston.
they're expensive,
They're not available.
but they're always available for a price.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the adjacent parking, the general shopping area parking, close enough to Shake Shack that if the Shake Shack parking was full, that people could walk?
Yes. So, as I was just explaining, the building sits right there. There are about 42 parking spaces as I'm tracing over. And then there is about 105 parking spaces in this parking field. So there is more than sufficient parking for Shake Shack for a spillover.
Yeah, they're covered, because it's not actually based on seats. the chairman was just asking me a question about the parking and the fact that you are consistent with it, because there's a couple ways that you can meet the parking requirement for a restaurant. There's patron space and then there's seats, and you basically have to take the higher. So you're using the higher standard, and either way, you're covered.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for this witness?
Just a quick question. I see it looks like you have some parking spaces that are backing up onto what appears to be the main drive of the parking lot. Does that create a problem for anybody else? I'm just concerned at backing up into a.
Was there curbing there? Or?
Well, it's actually no different than these parking spaces.
You're right.
So
You're
it's
absolutely
still
right.
an internal drive aisle. It's just no different than these parking spaces. Meaning, it's not a main drive aisle that has no uninterrupted curb.
Okay.
So it's appropriate for that area, because if these spaces were backing up, then I would be concerned, because this is a main throat that comes in. But these are secondary drive aisles from a shopping center planning point of view. So.
All right. Thank you for that.
Do you separate the parking area from the main drive aisle with curbing or something?
Yes. So the main drive aisle that comes in, which really brings the traffic in, and then the traffic disperses. Those drive aisles have curbing around it, so to channelize the traffic.
Okay. The McDonald's further east from here, not the one right across the street, but further east, delineates their parking area from the main drive aisle with landscaping and curbing. I just wanted to make sure that you would be doing that it's distinctive, the drive aisle is distinctive from parking.
Yes, that is correct. So there is a sidewalk that comes up which follows the main driveway access into the site, and which leads you all the way to the front sidewalk of these retail spaces. And these islands are landscaped islands. So there is a sidewalk and a landscape island.
Okay. That's a similar situation. It's a McDonald's in the parking lot of a shopping center. And it's, like I said, it's delineated.
Yep.
Okay, now you're in McDonald's, you're not in the shopping center. Okay. Any other questions from board members? Michael?
Mr. Chairman. Sir, will there be any signage on the building itself so that when people are driving in, they'll see what that restaurant is?
Yes, there is signage that we've received from the tenant that will be submitted to the zoning office for review. It conforms with the ordinance, so it's a small sign. It's pretty indiscreet,
People know where they're going.
but it'll definitely be delineated, so you'll know it's a Shake Shack.
Thank you.
Was there a menu sign? That was my only concern. I'm also the zoning officer, and we haven't reviewed the signage yet. So that was my only concern, is the ordinance addresses like freestanding and wall signs, but very rarely does it address any kind of menu boards.
Well, there's no drive-through there.
There's no, but I mean, like, so you know how sometimes you walk up to restaurants and they have now where they have something outside that shows zoning isn't just about the freestanding and the wall sign, but they're also about any signage that's in your windows. So the new thing now in a lot of the restaurants that we're seeing is they're putting signage in their windows. My code enforcement officer is very, very strict, and it's a maximum 25% in the windows. So, and this year, we are going to be enforcing signage in all the windows of Parsippany. So I'd hate for you to have something that is I've never been to a Shake Shack. So if there is something that is specific to you, that is not on your freestanding and is not one of your wall signs, now is the time to discuss it, because I don't want you to come back to zoning and we're not able to issue those permits, because that's a big thing now. The restaurants that you're advertising, you know, your special burger for the week, and it's in the windows and it's larger than the 25%. So if you have anything that's specific to them, now's the time to add that, because I can only give you what the ordinance permits, which is usually 1 or 2 small wall signs.
We appreciate that feedback. I'm working from the presumption that the signage package conforms. It's been reviewed, the code, and obviously I know I risk a potential trip back if it's not. So I do love coming up though. So
friendly.
Yes, absolutely. We'll take a look at that to make sure, but we do understand with that interpretation we may be looking at a more stringent approach than perhaps a first reading of the code might suggest, but we'll go back and we'll look at that. But we understand it to be conforming.
Jennifer, if I understand the way that it's written, that if somebody were to put, say, a slightly larger version of a normal menu in the window, it's not going to come anywhere near the 25% of the window.
What's happening now in a lot of the restaurants is when you're walking in, they have their menu, but then they're also putting like their special burger picture. And it's a picture that's visible from not when you're walking to the restaurant, when you're driving by, and they're large and they fill the window.
I've
So
never seen a Shake
McDonald's
Shack
and
do
Burger
anything
King-
like
I've
that.
never been to a Shake Shack,
Yeah.
but McDonald's and Burger King, it's become
Yeah,
the
that's
new
true.
thing in the last 2 years. And they have them in their windows, and we just started cracking down on that. So if there was something that you think that you're going to advertise and change that's in the windows that's other than that, anything on, even on the door, if you're walking in and you're putting your hours, Susan's working with zoning to change those ordinances, but right now the ordinance is silent on all of those things, so I don't want to have to be the bearer of bad news in weeks or a month from now.
Just so I'm clear on that part, though, hours of operation. You walk in, says whatever, and
As long
11
as
to
it's
11.
not over 25% of the window.
That counts, though, towards the calculation
That
of
counts towards-
signage.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
every
Way
little
the
bit
current
counts,
version
and
is
if it's
currently
all windows, we're working to change that. But it might not happen in time for when you're building, and, I know my zoning and construction departments are working quickly to try to get, all your permits in, so we don't want to hold up for signage and waiting for the ordinance, so I just wanted to put that out there in case there was anything we were missing.
Several years ago, when Commerce Bank opened up the street, the door handles were a red C, counted toward the outdoor sign calculation. So, Mr. DiPiero, you had a question?
Yeah, the last time I got involved with this project, the Waterview landlords on the commercial properties were objecting to the traffic light. And I raised the question of, is that a public road or is that a private road? Who are they to object? But I never got an answer to that. How was the traffic light issue resolved? Or has it been?
Yes, I could answer. Waterview Boulevard is a township road, and the traffic signal has been approved by the township as part of the last site plan amendment, and we've also secured a DOT permit for modification of the Route 46 and Waterview Boulevard intersection. And DOT also happens to do a cursory review when those signals are close to their signal, and their signal being the Waterview Boulevard and 46 signals. So it's been reviewed and vetted.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to put a left turn arrow on I tell you, if you're on Waterview and want to turn left onto 46, during rush hour in the morning especially, you can sit for a long time, because traffic coming around the jug handle, coming across 46 onto Waterview, you can wait a long time.
Because they're heading through to either get to Waterview or to get to 287. Because Waterview is a good shortcut to 287 South.
Yes, it is.
So I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't distinctly know if there's a green arrow or not,
there
but
are
it's been
other
approved
people.
by DOT, so I'm sure the folks there have done their.
There are other people in the room that could have heard the question. Hopefully. All right, any other questions for this witness from the board? Okay, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have anything else affirmatively. I have Mr. Lee Klein here. We prepared a parking analysis as required by the ordinance, but we've already touched on the parking, and Susan's already done all the calculations, so I think that would really just be repetitive. It's relatively simple application, so unless there's any further questions that are more specific, I don't have anything further from an affirmative presentation standpoint.
Yeah, just to be clear for the board, as I mentioned there, you can either calculate by seats or patron space, and even when you account for the outdoor seats, in this case, the patron space still gives you a higher number, so that's why that was used, and they do meet that requirement.
I do want to add, though, I would like to just thank the board and its staff for turning this around so quickly. It is much appreciated. I know the office is working hard to get permits out, And I know I aggravated Nora by submitting the application and noticing for it without her actually knowing. So I appreciate everyone being cooperative and helping us move this forward. It is much appreciated.
Okay.
Mr.
The
Chairman?
public have anything?
Yes.
One last question. You talked about the traffic being basically the same, but is it really going to be basically the same versus a bank?
Well, from the zoning's perspective, it's the same because it's permitted. It's permitted so long as we show we have enough parking. So that's really the exercise that's to be considered. But in the overall parking analysis, the zoning itself doesn't treat the bank any differently than the restaurant.
Because comes noon or dinner time, those are peak hours for this type of facility, which means dinner time is rush hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a permitted use though, so when it's a permitted use, the planning board's review of traffic is very circumspective, if there's any review at all, unfortunately.
Okay.
The governing body has basically determined that the traffic is appropriate in permitting it.
Okay, I'll open the meeting to anyone in the public that has any questions or comments on this application. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion. Is there a motion?
Before I make a motion, I did not catch any unusual, it's just straightforward. Is there anything?
You mean in terms of variances, or?
What, I mean, why don't you list what we need to move to approve?
Yeah, if may I?
Go ahead,
Yes.
Scott. You're looking at him or me?
Okay, what applicant requires here is preliminary and final site plan approval, of which all the board members are well familiar. At least as long as I've been with this board, and I know several members, this is our first conditional use application, so a quick 2 sentences on that. Most of you will recall that conditional uses are uses that are permitted in the zone, assuming or in the event that they meet certain conditions that that use is subject to. Here, the restaurant use is permitted. It's conditionally permitted, subject to the condition that the applicant demonstrate to the planning board that there is sufficient parking. So you've heard testimony from both the applicant as well as reviewed Ms. Vivate's review letter, which all indicate that parking is more than sufficient on the site. So the condition, in my view at least, appears to be met. So I think that it's a minimal conditional use review. So what we need is a motion for preliminary and final site plan approval as well as conditional use approval, subject to the following conditions. There are 3 in addition to our usual set of conditions. That bollards or some similar structure will be added to prevent vehicles from being able to drive into the outdoor dining area, and we'll make that subject to the satisfaction of the board's engineer. 2 parking spaces as identified by the board's planner will be land banked and may be available to the applicant upon the approval of the township engineer in the future. And failing that, they may apply to the planning board for that approval. And 3, the applicant remains bound by the terms of the revised settlement agreement.
I move that.
Well done.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Perwick, seconds. Please call the roll.
Mr. Perelik?
Yes.
Councilman DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Dinsmore?
Yes.
Mr. Fajiri?
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Mealy?
Yes.
Ms. Veely?
Yes.
Mr. Von Aiken?
Yes.
Chairman Keller?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
No more can say.
Okay. Any other business to come before the board?
Does our professionals have anything they want to hold us for?
No.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Let me again wish everyone a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And welcome back to Councilman DePiero, who's served the board many times over the past years.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mealy, you took a year off. Welcome back.
Yes.
And we've got a big year ahead of us. We're going to finish the master plan, right?
Right.
Our planner is nodding her head.
Good. She's still awake.
That's the big thing before us. As you may have read in the papers, 1515 is off the table for right now. 1515 Route 10 doesn't mean it won't come back. but there are some other big parcels of land that could show up before us this year, so be prepared.
Are we gonna have,
We'll see you on the 28th, right?
is the mayor's going to have another special meeting for,
Affordable housing?
well, on the master plan?
Oh, we don't have one scheduled yet. Our next master plan meeting.
Worked hard tonight.
Are you referring to the email that came out today?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Oh, is that?
Oh, I know, but
If you saw the email, the title was Mayor's Town Hall's Return.
Yeah.
And there was a link to the master plan review that Susan's company put together that didn't work.
Oh dear.
So I, early in the afternoon when I saw it, I clicked on it. I said, well, they'll see it and fix it. About 4:45, I called because it still wasn't working. And Joyce Garrow said she was going to talk to Jack and see if we could get it up again. But that is available online. Is it available from the website?
It should be on the website. We sent it earlier in the week, or late last
Okay.
week.
So the review from that big meeting we had at the
Yeah.
Hills.
I think it's basically the review that you've seen, but now it's publicly available.
I know.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Okay, a motion was made to adjourn, unless anyone objects.
Objection.
See you on the 28th.
Commercial property.
keep that one. That's what we're off.
In case anyone ever wants to.
Zero income. But the land